Hello, it has been a long time and no see. I may or may not do a November wrap up. I don't really know. The only book that totally sold me was You've Reached Sam, so I might talk about that at some point, but for right now, we're going to put a pin in that and move on to December's TBR because we're already late with that too. That's how things go nowadays. I love doing different thematic TBRs and like having them by either some kind of topic or some kind of like set of circumstances that make sense when they're all together. So the only thing that all of the books in this current TBR have in common is that they were all books that I have been gifted at some point, at least throughout this year, and probably a couple of them from last year too, that I just keep saying I will get to at some point in time, and then I never do. So figured with the holidays coming up, it would be a really good time to focus my entire TBR stack on books that have been gifted to me previously. Who exactly they came from, I don't always remember. I'm terrible about saving like notes that come with things. I should be better about it and tape them to the inside cover, but I don't. So if you recognize the book that you have gifted me, please know that I am so grateful for it, and I am finally going to take the time to read it, hopefully, at some point this month, especially since we have at least a week of break where maybe I can try to plow through some of the books that I have far too long neglected on my shelf. As usual, we are par for the course with me having no idea what any of the books are about or having very little idea, just kind of knowing the covers and having heard the titles, and that's about it. So this comes to no shock, where I promised last month that I would maybe do a little more research, and I didn't. So here we are, winging another TBR video and pretending I know what I'm talking about. All right, up first is the most recent book that I have been gifted, and this was part of the Secret Shelf group, and I received from my Secret Shelf a copy of Tiffany D. Jackson's White Smoke, which I was really hoping to get in time for more of like spooky thriller season and didn't, but that's okay. Better late than never. I have seen some mixed things about this, and I feel like people are kind of either in camp, I love it and it was awesome, or they were devastated by it in some way, shape, or form. But I also feel like that is an entirely accurate trend for Tiffany D. Jackson anyway, where there are some books of hers that I'm like, holy shit, that was such a good book, and there are others that I'm like, did not care for that. For example, I did not care for Monday's Not Coming, but I loved Grown. So this book is about a character who is running from ghosts. I don't know if that means that she can necessarily see ghosts or if there's just things in her past that she's trying to escape. It's not really clear in the first paragraph of the summary. That leaves me really wondering what direction that this book is going to go, because I know it's like a psychological thriller. But is it going to be more fantasy thriller, or is it just like there are things in her past that has haunted her, which it's probably going to lean more toward that. But upon further investigation, one part of the summary says, but running from ghosts is just a metaphor, right? That's all I need to know. I will probably be very confused throughout most of this. Like, I feel like I often am with Tiffany D. Jackson's books. I hope it doesn't break me, but it could. I'm hoping that I lean more to good camp, because I feel like I'm very torn between whether I love or don't love her books at this point. Up next, I have two books by the same author. It is Erin Morgenstern, and I have not read either of them. However, I have seen wonderful things about both of them, and both of them happen to be gifts at different points in time. So we have The Starless Sea, and we also have The Night Circus. And I mean, I've heard good things about both, but again, I know nothing about either of these books except that people have enjoyed them. All right, so in the Starless Sea, it seems like there is some kind of hidden sanctuary of some kind, and there are books, and one of the characters is reading a story or a page in the book, and it brings him back to, I think it said, an event in his own life. And because of that, he falls into this world where there is adventure, there is romance, there's mystery, there is stuff going on. It seems almost fantastical, so I don't really know what kind of elements will show up through it. So for some reason I thought that these were YA novels, but now I'm a little confused and maybe concerned that they're not, because one of the reviews on the back of this one says that it is a love story for adults that feels luxuriously romantic. So I'm gonna lean to the fact that it's probably not gonna end up on my school shelf. But this book's general synopsis talks about there is a duel between two magicians to, it seems like, be the better magician of the two. And they kind of, maybe enemies to lovers, kind of fall in love, and there's a romance that spawns from it. I think I've talked about this book before, and that also comes to nobody's surprise, but it's We Hunt the Flame. This was gifted to me by a dear friend. I know there is a second book in the duology that just recently came out. So part of me is kind of like, I want to save this one for last because I would rather wait until I have both of them and then go one after the other. But I've also waited a very long time to read this one too. So I think that of all of the books I'm going to talk about, this is the one I'll save for last if I get to it in the month of December, or maybe somehow magically the sequel will show up on my front door. Reading the back cover of it, it kind of seems like there's a little bit of a Mulan vibe to it, but it's very much an Arabic setting instead. And the protagonist, one of them, is a hunter who has to disguise herself as a boy in order to accomplish what it is that she wants to accomplish in the world. She is after a lost artifact that could eventually help save her people. And there is also, I think, a prince who is after the same artifact. So the two of them are both after this same piece, this artifact that exists, and they both want it for very, very different reasons, but they probably have to work, I think that they have to work together to get it, and there probably is also another enemies to lovers kind of conversation and story that happens throughout. It's not something I'm super well versed about, but I do have two friends who have raved about this book and they highly recommend it. It may be the last one I read in December, but I will try to get to it and then hopefully just jump right into the sequel after that. This was a book that I had put on my list only because I loved the cover. Still know nothing about it. Well, I do because I've talked about it a little bit, but I know that it's about sisters and then they go missing and they reappear, but they're changed and they're like these strikingly beautiful now kind of creatures. And then one of the three sisters goes missing again and the other two sisters have to find her. So I think that that's right. I haven't looked at the inside cover. I feel like that's something I've talked about multiple times before. So this is one, it's a little bit shorter. So I think that I can definitely do this one, but let's confirm that I'm right first. Oh, thank God, I am right. That gist sounded incredibly familiar as I was talking about it. Like, I don't know, maybe I've recorded it in a video before or something. I feel like this is also one I talked about before too, Lore by Alexander Bracken, but I was so confused by the summary of it that that's all I can remember right now. I have no idea. I make up half the shit that I say in these videos. These videos are getting worse and worse. It's another one that I've heard really good things about and I loved the cover, so I put it on my list as well and was gifted it. Okay, so to give a better summary of this, every seven years, these mortals come and they walk as mortals on Earth, and there's like kind of a survival competition between them. And one of them fled a long time ago and she's like thinking about getting her revenge. Yeah, and then the hunt starts in New York City the next morning and her friend Athena is there and they have to decide whether to join up with them, I guess. I could be totally making up if this was actually gifted to me or not. I'm pretty positive that it was, but it's Legendborn by Tracy Dawn, and I have been sitting on this one for a while. I was supposed to do a buddy read with two friends 3 months ago for it. It was over the summer, August maybe. I think we said we were going to do it, maybe July, and then we just you know how it goes. You put it off, you put it off, you put it off. In this book, our protagonist is staying at UNC Chapel Hill. It's like a residential program for high school students. And one night she witnesses an attack on campus. And it's not just any attack, it's a magical attack. So then she discovers there's this whole secret society and she has these kinds of powers herself. And when they're uncovering this, they find that she witnessed her mom's death and like knows some kind of secret to it, or there's like some kind of uncovering of that, but it's a lot of like the moving on from the grief of the trauma that happened in that situation and like learning how to become her own person, especially with these magical powers that are found because of the society and this training that she goes through. Okay, so really this is a pretty substantial pile for December. However, I also know that, you know, we have a week off at the end, and maybe I will have some better review quality thoughts to share about these, especially since they were gifts and someone obviously thought that I would enjoy these books for a particular reason and sent them. So I'm excited to dive into them and hopefully maybe get a chance to share with you my thoughts and feelings about them. Anyway, we're gonna wrap this whole thing up. We're gonna conclude this really terrible video, but it got done, which is the important thing. It's kind of been at the back of my mind. So that's what I'm gonna try to read in December and hopefully have time to really dedicate to enjoying some of the gifts that have been purchased for me and sent my way over the course of the year, maybe 2 years. That is it. That is all that I have for you, this really short and sad video. And I will maybe see you back here with some reviews at some point, and if nothing else, hopefully with a January TBR or some 2022 goals looking forward at reading in the new year, because it's almost that time again. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you back here again at some point in time. Bye.